Welcome to Keep It Together. We're an online talk show that offers businesses, leaders and entrepreneurs expert panel advice on how to keep it together during COVID-19. For episode 2, we're going to be looking at lockdown performance anxiety. Some people are still busy working at home and they feel an expectation from the organisation or their bosses to do 9 to 5 hours, but the family presence and demands are just as high and harder to control in a lockdown environment, as well as managing and navigating through the social distancing bubble routines that we now have become accustomed to. Many people are feeling like they're just not serving their businesses or their families well, and this is causing a lot of anxiety and unease, impacting both work and your home experiences. Welcome back, Anton.
Thank you very much.
For those of you guys who haven't seen us before at Keeping It Together, this is Anton Ashcroft. Anton is a registered psychologist, and he has been developing and delivering neuroscience-based leadership programs for the last 8 years. Is that right?
Yeah, and I've been a psychologist for about 27 years.
And that's a long time looking inside people's brains. And we're specifically looking at how people are behaving and reacting in the workplace as leaders, businesses, and entrepreneurs. Last episode, we covered a little bit about what's going on with your brain in terms of a red brain, amber brain, and red brain, with everything changing and your three worlds colliding together. And essentially, it's been attacked by a tiger. And that was incredibly helpful to understand the different parts that you will be feeling, the roller coaster that you'll be going through, and how we can manage that. And this week we are going with this episode, I should say, because the weeks are still, feels like the weeks are going past by quickly, but they're not. This week we are going to be talking about something that everyone is suffering that's working, and I'm calling it lockdown performance anxiety. I don't know if it's a thing, but I know that it's a thing. It is now. It's a thing that I have felt. There's from an entrepreneur's perspective, and I think from someone who's leading teams, there is the sense of you've worked 9 to 5, you go into the office, and then suddenly you're working from home, and you have that pressure to be having the same productivity. But you also have the pressure of the home life, and if you've got kids, a kid life, or carers, and you just don't feel like you're doing you're serving them very well, any of them. And you start, like you say, some of the symptoms or triggers of anxiety, you're more irritable, or you're more sensitive to things that you wouldn't be, and anxiety starts to build. So what I'd like to know from your perspective, first of all, let's talk about the entrepreneur mindset. Why am I getting this anxiety? Like, I know that the situation is different, but I feel like I'm really letting myself down and the people around me because I'm not as productive as I used to be.
Well, there's several reasons why that's likely to be the case. Entrepreneurs are different, but there are lots of overlaps. And one of the key traits about entrepreneurs is about how they get into action and do things. And so when something suddenly changes, it's like the natural coping mechanism is, well, I get through things by doing more. But by doing more, I'm not doing enough because it's not creating instant change. It doesn't feel as though it's instantly working because change takes time. So what do you do as an entrepreneur? Well, what I've done in the past is I do more. So you end up thinking that in order to achieve success in this new setting, what you have to do is just do more of what you've been doing, but do it more. And it's not really going to be very, very helpful, because what we need to do is, in a sense, step back from the situation and go, not what do we need to do more of, but what do we need to be thinking about differently that will start to allow us to connect to this new environment in a way that works for us and the people around us.
And it's actually getting your head about thinking differently. So One, this term that we've talked a lot about before, you and and I think you said that maybe I suffer from it.
Yeah.
Is not only my productivity, but I just don't feel like the standards that that I'm used to are being achieved.
Yeah.
And what did you call it?
Unrelenting standards.
Unrelenting standards. That sounds like a fun person to be with. But tell me a little bit about that, because we do, I think you say, have to adjust.
Yeah.
And how can someone who has an entrepreneur mindset or has unrelenting standards adjust? Tell me.
Yeah, so again, it's completely natural, and it's also productive. It's helpful. All behaviours have a sweet spot, and the flip side of an unrelenting standard, which sounds quite negative, is drive and passion and commitment and motivation. The problem is when you try and overuse that skill. I'm in a new situation, so I just need to drive even more in order to achieve success, but I don't know what success looks like in this new environment, so I'll just do more and more and more. So I'm here, if you like, and I've got this sort of idea that I need to be here and I need to be here tomorrow. So when you're doing all this doing, you may move from here to here to here to here to here, but because your expectation is, I need to be here in order to feel successful, all of this growth is being lost and it's being ignored. And all you're going is, I'm still not good enough. I'm still not there yet. I'm still not doing the right thing. And that in itself can be extremely anxiety provoking. And what's your coping mechanism? If you're that type of entrepreneur, you just do more. So now you've put your standard even further ahead. So the way in which we can really make a difference is not, and this is what people think, do I have to let go of my standards? No, you don't. You can still have exactly the same standard, but it's shifting your focus to seeing yourself gaining mastery towards that standard. In other words, if this is 12 and you're at 3, when you move to 4, it's rewarding and recognizing the fact that you've moved to 4 with your goal at 12. When you're at 4, you now go, well, what does it look like to move to 5? And then you recognize that step. And it sounds blindingly obvious, but if you have the more mentality or unrelenting standards, more is never enough. Good is never good enough. So even though intellectually okay, I've done this and this and this, your immediate emotional response is, yeah, but I'm not here yet.
I'm sitting here with clasped hands.
I can see.
Feeling very tense because it's it's like looking into a mirror and going, yes, that is me. Yeah. And and you say intellectually, I understand when you are showing, you need to appreciate growth moments as you are a more person. I know that's me going, is that what my mindfulness training really is? and it's I suppose normally, okay, is you have the time to go to separate and go me time to do the mindfulness and enjoy those growth moments. But when you've got your 3 worlds in your face and in your bubble, it's very hard to slow down and go, you know what, I'm not going to get to 12, but it's okay that I'm at 4 or 5 and I need to appreciate.
Right? And that's absolutely right, because when your worlds collide, you're not good enough now in 4 domains, not just 1. When you're at work, you can say, well, I can work harder and I can work 10 hours a day, and you can sort of almost justify your drive because you're being literally single-minded. But when you're at home, you're now not a good enough parent, not a good enough partner, not a good enough worker. And so the guilt is magnified. And what do you do when your guilt is magnified? You do more. But the coping mechanism that moves from being really helpful and really productive to being really quite destructive.
And just talking about destructive, so that's an entrepreneur mindset or a more mindset. I love this. Yeah. I like how you've repositioned me in a more positive light. What about, people who have bosses, leaders in a corporate environment, for example, or, even SMEs, and they are getting the pressure without... and it's not, people don't realize sometimes they do this pressure to be as productive as they are in the office when the boss is able to see them? And what is a boss doing when they are expecting 9 to 5, even though you're working from home, you've got kids, you know, the world is different? And why don't they recognize that? And even, you know, and I'm talking not perception that your boss is expecting, that there are some key hints, and, you know.
Well, I've been noticing this a lot with the businesses I've been working with currently, is that there is a natural and understandable tension, because even the most caring of bosses still has accountability and responsibility that they want their staff to adhere to. Mm-hmm. But when you are working in a more distant way, how do you maintain the care and the accountability and the responsibility when you're not physically there in that more connected, overseeing way? And if you are a controlling manager, you're much more likely to defer to micromanagement, which means that you're going to feel even more unsafe when the people are working in a distant way, because you can't physically see what they're doing. So you're going to be overcompensating to create even more systems to monitor what's going on. The other thing, that even if you are on the caring side, is that you're in a business. So the struggle that people are saying at the moment is, how do I show my care in this distant way? And also, how do I get feedback that what they need to be doing is what they should be doing? And the third bit, that's the bit of the sandwich, if you like, in the middle, is, and how do I also do it in a way that is realistic for them and realistic for the business? So you can see that there's a massive tension there.
And what do you, so, you know, normally you have this tension, and it's in an office, and you've got HR department and people, you know, teams like yourself are normally in there helping coaches work through different types of leadership, and there's the controlling leadership style. What do you do when you're working from home and there's no support like that? And I suppose what I'm saying is, how can we be more empathetic? Is that a solution to the someone we report to, and let them know, hey, your controlling ways are really difficult and causing anxiety? Or, you know, what strategies would you apply? Because at the moment, that thought would make me feel quite tense.
Yeah. Well, the first thing that I would say, that if you're experiencing that as a worker, the first step is to work out, where is that coming from? Because if you are motivated and you are dedicated and you do have a passion for your job, it's probably some of it is coming from you. So how realistic are you being about yourself and the transition, and what are you putting into your daily structure that is purposeful? Because this idea that if I stick at my table in my living room from 9 until 6, I am going to be more productive than if I stick in my living room from 9 until 3, but I then do other things. It's a myth. Productivity comes from us being in our best selves. So, and we only last in our best selves for normally about 45 minutes. Whereas in the workplace, we would naturally maybe go for coffee with someone or check in with someone. We would have those natural breaks. Whereas at home, we won't naturally have those breaks, because we're in a new routine. So we now have to consciously think about, how do we maintain our best self state, not so that we work for 8 hours. That's the wrong focus. The best focus is so that I get what I need to get done. And as part of the transition process, do it in a realistic way. Because realistically, temporarily, and possibly even the medium term, you might be in a position where your productivity overall is going to go down for a while whilst you adjust to your new situation. And if you're not honest with yourself, you can't possibly have an honest conversation with your manager. So the first step is really to check in with yourself. Am I in my sweet spot for me being the best me that I can be, with the constraints of being at home and having the kids around and everything else? Is it realistic? And if I think it is realistic, but my manager's not recognizing it, the next step is, how do I have a challenging conversation with my manager? And not the you, because they're just doing their job too. The most helpful conversation to have is, I've worked out that I can be my most productive when. How can I support that with your support so that we're all on the same page? So it's moving towards a desired solution rather than a discussion of the problem.
And I think that some of those skills people may naturally have, but it's almost when you're working from home,
yeah,
and you're in your red brain,
yeah,
you lose some of those skills that you would actually give advice and tell someone else to do, right?
Absolutely. And the first thing is that we talked about it in the last episode, but if you're aware of being in orange brain or red brain, the most important thing to do is give yourself permission to acknowledge the fact that you're not in your best self. So your first task of the day is to get you back into your best self in some way, which might be going for a walk, or removing yourself from the family, or if it's the evening, having a relaxing drink, or whatever it is that works for you, is making sure that you're putting it in place so that the next day you can spend more time in your best self. And again, if we are saying our standard is here and we're achieving this, instantly you can't be in your best self because you're in a stressed state, because you're not performing as you think you should.
So to reduce my lockdown performance anxiety, first of all, I need to actually be true to myself.
Absolutely.
And have I set my environment right up? Have I set like Natasha Tucker's will be talking about later, have you set up your day and routine that suits you best? So for example, in the morning, or you're most productive, what can you do in the afternoon? And then once you have done what you think is right for you and for your performance, then set yourself up for those challenging conversations to say, look, I've set myself up, this is what I'm delivering and I feel is of value. Can we talk about your expectations in this environment, right? That I feel more comfortable about that. And then someone like myself with the unrelenting standards.
Yeah, that's it.
Or the more personality types, just to, hey man, slow down and enjoy the growth to get to where you want to be, and where you are, and stop adding on as soon as you get there or before you get there.
Yeah.
That's really valuable advice, and I'm sure that's something that we can all take, even not just in the work environment, but in your own personal environment as well.
Yeah, the best skills are not, if you go on leadership training, the best skills for leadership training is not about being a great leader at work. It's about being the best you that you can be and helping other people be the best that they can be. And that's for life. That's not just for work. Great leaders for life. I like that. I feel like I want to do some sort of homey thing, but... So I'm back with Natasha Tucker, and she is part of Divergent Thinking, which is a neuro duo, her and Anton Ashcroft, who is a psychologist, and they work with organisations and they are champions of the neurodiverse workforce. And we'll talk a little bit about that on the second half, because the first half is she has spent many, many years as a leading an organisation leading specialist. Is that right? Have I got that right?
Learning development specialist, yeah.
Learning development specialist, apologies. And one of the things is a very, very hot topic, and we wanted to talk about it at Keeping Together, is I'm calling it lockdown performance anxiety. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people, some people are still working from home and are still very busy, or they have a culture or a leader that is expecting the same performance, productivity performance, even though they're on a working from home environment. The partner might be working from home as well. They could have children at younger ages, which, as we know, is very hard. You're herding cats all day. And there is a bit of anxiety with trying to balance everything and feeling like you're not worthy of, you know, what you're delivering to home, you know, and what you're doing with work. It's really quite stressful for a lot of people, and I think the quality of the output they feel is being impacted. What strategies would you put in place, or would you recommend for myself, or if you're in a leadership team and you've got many teams and you're just feeling like you're just not performing and you really feel quite guilty about it?
Yeah, it's a challenging one. I've even gone through it myself. So I think it's around working out routines that work well for you, and boundaries. You know, whether you're a person who is highly productive in the morning, like I kind of do brain thinking stuff in the morning, and then I sort of wear out a bit in the afternoon. I do other stuff where I can get distracted and it doesn't impact me as much. So understanding when you work well and when you can do other stuff. And having, which is routine, and even things like whether it's an app or it's a Word document where you actually take note of what it is you're doing. Like the other day I did an afternoon of calls and I noted how many, and I was like, wow, I did 12. That was really good. Versus if I was just entering them into the CRM, I didn't feel like I'd done so much. So having a visual, and it depends what works well for you, if it's visual or it's literally what is it that stimulates you to feel good, because there is the challenge of that. I also think ideally having a discussion around what the expectations are right now, because, you know, is it that I'm at 100%? Are we that busy? Or is it that we're at 80% because of, you know, the reality of where we're at? Hopefully organisations are sharing that, because there is a lot of pressure. And as we talked last time around the different green, orange, red brain, you know, there's a lot of media coverage. There's a lot of stuff that's in our heads on top of our jobs, including our family and our home situation. So, you know, what works well? Is it structure? Is it having a good routine, and whatever else will work well for you? And what are other people in your team doing well to do what's working well for them?
What happens if you have the fortunate scenario of a leader or a manager that expects you to be doing 9 to 5 outputs, and it's incredibly hard working from home? How can you manage that?
Yeah, that's
you're not in a position to be resigning.
No, nobody really is. Well, I guess it's having a chat to them around asking what their expectations are. I'm so into what is it you're expecting from me? You know, is there flexibility right now for when the kids are full on energy, or the animals, if that's what you've got, so that can you work later at night or earlier in the morning so that you can come and go as you need while still being productive, and probably being more productive than sitting from 9 to 5 while there's all this noise going on around you and you're getting the guilt because the kids maybe are on technology because they're on holiday. So having conversations, finding out what they think, asking if you can be honest with them around if you haven't already discussed what your home setup is right now, asking if you can share that, or asking what theirs looks like, and then sharing what yours looks like so that they can get a bit of insight into where you are right now, because they're not seeing you, you're not physically in the same building. So trying to build some knowledge with each other and awareness, and hopefully come to more of an understanding of the reality of everything.
My key outtake is actually ask what the expectation is for working from home regarding to productivity. You never know. They might be, actually, it's unrealistic. I know that you're probably only going to get 4 hours and, spend the rest of the time with your family. Brilliant.
Hopefully. And also what comes to mind is ask what the organisation's expectations are first, maybe, and then ask what theirs are, because if they're being unrealistic, if you take it up a level, there might be a little bit of, it's worth an ask.
And the other one is also figure out what your own personal expectations, because I find 9 times out of 10, my expectation is way different to what is actually expected to me. So you're over delivering, right?
Yeah.
And it's okay maybe to find some sort of alignment and truth within yourself to go, I'm better off doing 4 hours really focused, working from home from the morning because the morning works best than I am trying to do my regular day.
Yeah, totally. And it might also be like, I often book my meetings for the afternoon if I can, because that's when I'm less productive. So, how rather than being in a meeting for an hour and then trying to set up doing something and then I finally get my head into it, then I'm in a meeting and it's like, wow. So yeah, it's understanding what works for you as well as trying to understand what they're looking for and seeing if you guys can, if you need to, if there's a little bit of wriggle room.
Yeah. And then just out of that, the thing that keeps coming back with the advice that you have helping me, God, we're losing our words, helping me keep it together is know yourself and your truth. Again, you've reiterated this. Know what how you like to work and ask, and verbalize that as well and understand how other people like to work. So it's really, really important maybe that we use this time that we have on some of the skills that you and Anton have also been talking about, which is reflective skills about your best ways of working and your best being your best self.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, I often refer when people are doing more for others than themselves, go back to the flight attendants on the airplane, if the oxygen mask drops, then you put it on yourself first because you can't help others, or you can't really do what you need to do unless you are actually looking after yourself.
Yeah.
So same thing.
So basically my performance anxiety feels a little bit better.
Does it? Good.
I have been really struggling. As an entrepreneur, you're always on the go. You've got to be up first thing. You've got to have that energy 24/7 because no one's going to turn around and go, oh, here's the business for you. So this being forced in this environment and not being out and about and solving, people's communication problems is very, look, even my body language, I just
clench fists,
and I'm just like,
relax,
up and out of it.
I know. I get that too as a startup. I totally get it. It's you're always on, but are you in your green place? Where's your zen? They talk about emotions attract people, and when you're like that, it's like, straight away you kind of feel tighty.
Yeah.
So it is. It's take a deep breath, as Anton would say, and I like to wriggle my shoulders and do my neck and go with it, man, because we don't know what's going on out there. We just got to ride the wave, as some people would say.
It's a big wave.
It is a big wave.
I'm looking forward to our next episode as well. We are going to be covering a lot of emotions. Next episode, we're going to be talking about grief, the grief of losing the success that you had before COVID-19, before lockdown. A lot of people were humming, thriving, things were looking up for people. And so we're going to be talking about acknowledging that grief, because some people probably don't know that's what they're feeling. And we're also going to be talking a little bit about, it's going to be uncertain times for a long time. So how do you deal and how is the brain going to deal with that? So I really look forward to your feedback on that and the ongoing advice that you give us, Tasha. And I hope that leadership teams and entrepreneurs and business people really find a lot of value out of this. Thank you so much. Welcome back, Jerry Bill. And I'm trying to say it in a better accent because Jerry Bill in a Kiwi accent just does not do it for anybody, I'm sure, and especially yourself. Jerry, for those who haven't heard from us at Keep It Together, Jerry is a Chief Happiness Officer at Tickle Pink. He trains leaders and designs health and well-being engagement programs that drive happiness in order to grow businesses through growing their people. And for this episode, Jerry is going to help us understand how what I've been calling lockdown performance anxiety, how we can get through it as company cultures. So where this is coming from is that some people are feeling like they're not doing a great job for their work, and they're not doing a great job for their home, managing all those three worlds in their bubbles. And it's causing a bit of anxiety, really. And you've also, in some cases, have got the partner that's also working from home as well. And that's, you know, a different, their work culture might be very different to your work culture. And prior to COVID-19, you know, every culture has its values and principles, and there may be unwritten and written rules about how long you're there, when you're there. You know, it might be a 9 to 5, or it might be a 9 to when the job gets done culture, or it might be, you know, you pop in and let everyone know where you're at all the time, and then you get thrown into working from home. So how can an organisation help people who are suffering, their people, from lockdown performance anxiety?
That's a big question, Lena. even before this nasty little virus waltzed into our lives, I'd find myself with the team working in a company that described itself as, we're a high performance culture, we're a high performing culture. And I was, okay, define that. You know, and sometimes we would understand that, yes, it's a business that moves at pace. They have a very highly trained bunch of people. They work together, they support each other. And as a result, they get extraordinarily good results. The flip side of that is an organization that basically treats people as cogs in a machine to get the results which please the senior tiers of the business. There are horrific levels of burnout, employee churns through the roof, and the business isn't going to be here in 2 or 3 years. And so there are two extremes there. In response to what you said, I'd go back to what I said, I think last time round. We've all got trainer wheels. You know, unless I am a business that's in a startup mode, which is fundamentally remote anyway, therefore this really is business as usual, everything has changed. You know, my way of operating has changed, my team cohesion has changed, probably my customer demands have changed as well. And the nature of my customers and what they're looking for has changed, because we've got more important things on our minds right now than what to buy from you in many cases, you know? So I would say that it's actually time for a reality check. We are week 2 into lockdown? Psychologically, we're finding out that actually week 3 from other countries in the situation, week 3 is when the most emotional and organizational issues start to occur. That's worth bearing in mind. But I would be amazed if any business was able to smoothly transition from before lockdown to lockdown and still meet the same expectations around productivity and performance and timing. Because we're all learning. We're learning how to communicate. We're learning how to operate. We're working in a changed market structure. So I just think that for a business and a leader to expect minimal disruption to what's going on is cuckoo land. Sorry, not going to happen. Therefore, what's required and what the culture needs to embody is compassion and a bit of reality. Because my business's performance actually happens because of the human beings in that business. You know, it's like a machine, although we're not cogs, we're human beings. But if we have other things on our mind which prevent us from being our best selves, we probably aren't going to do the best work. So we are in an adjustment period. Not only are we dealing with the cycle of distress, you know, from the shock into the withdrawal into whatever the emergence looks like, we're also going through a learning curve. How do we adapt what we used to do to how we have to do it now? So I think the culture has to actually become a vessel of belonging, typified by compassion and patience and supportiveness. And what I'm already seeing in some companies, people are popping up as being natural leaders. They may have no title, they may have no role, if you like, in doing this, but because they're seeing things not going as well as they could do, or people struggling, they're going, I can help. So you know, I think that, I'm looking at the notes I made about this last night as well, the culture has to become a source of comfort and encouragement. And let's go right back to what you said at the start around the word perfectionist. Speaking as a recovered perfectionist, for me, it's a loaded word. The desire to be perfect equates to an inability to fail, which also means I'm not going to grow. I'm not going to learn. I won't get any better. None of us are perfect. We might do things perfectly now and then, but I am incapable of perfection. I aspire to it. And again, I had a conversation with somebody recently around the difference between I need to do better, which to me implies a sense of I'm not good enough yet, to I can do better, which is optimistic and hopeful. So I'm extraordinarily wary of the perfectionist word. At the best of times, it tends to create unrealistic expectations. I love the idea of we're going to keep getting better. You know, continuous improvement is to me what makes a lot of business magical. We're always trying to find ways. And you talked about Air New Zealand in the last, I've worked with them a lot, and I love their determination to find, you know, refreshing, original ways to do things which create better outcomes for customers. I love that. But it has to be grounded in the reality that right now we are all suffering. We're suffering deeply, personally, as men, women, mums, dads, etc., etc., etc. And also we're suffering as workmates. We have no idea how we're going to look as a team in 2 months' time. So I think that the organizational culture needs to be able to stretch to encompass how we all are right now and how we're all responding. It needs to be able to create that comfort, so the rhythm and the connection and the communication. And it needs to be a sign of support. You know, if something goes wrong, what do we all need to do to make sure it doesn't happen again? Not what have you got to do, not that you screwed up, but how do we, the business community, the workplace tribe, the whānau, have to come together to make sure this doesn't happen again? Yeah.
And I absolutely love, you know, the three things that a company or a culture, and then, like you say, stretch, you know, to cater for the anxiety or whatever emotions people are going to go through. Be that support, you know, for people, that comfort. I love that, a culture of comfort. And I think that is wonderful advice, because I think people will be, apprehensive now, you know, like I say, lockdown anxiety about their performance now, you know, but I think people will be apprehensive of what this new world is going to look like when they go back. So really that stretchy message, I think, is really on point, and comfort. Like, you kind of want to nestle into the bosom of people that you trust when you go back. You do not want to be walking back into, what, as you say, a culture that doesn't have this trust, because you may not want to walk back.
Well, more than that, the science and the case studies show that an organizational culture that embodies trust, and the freedom to fail, the business performs better on every single metric. We make more money, we're more productive, we keep our better people as well, and we attract more good people. And again, even before COVID-19, risk and the ability to deal with failure is a prerequisite. It's table stakes for being in business today. And if somebody or organization is so paranoid around the risk of failure, I don't believe they'll be able to adapt and shapeshift the way that businesses need to do to this changing world. I've talked about the need for our culture to be able to be elastic and to stretch. If both the way that the company is led and the way that the organizational culture is nourished and kept operating through, again, connection and communication, if we don't have that, and if the pressure is simply, this must be done, it creates a very brittle situation. And if things are brittle, they break.
Yeah.
People break, processes break. And I believe that the things that could go wrong are the ones that probably will be of more consequence than if we accept we're actually in an adventure. Whether you like it or not, this is an adventure. And some of life's adventures aren't actually asked for, But a lot of the great philosophers talk about every great growth, every great leap of faith actually comes at a time when we're going, I don't want this, not now, not me. But this has been thrust upon us. We can't abscond. We can't say, no, thank you. We're in it.
And I think also too, thank you so much, Jerry, because, one of the things that I'm going through, I'm more on the entrepreneur side. I don't have a company of 20 to 100, just working on that. But, that performance anxiety, I think it's, if you have that culture that you feel that people trust you, but more importantly, I like the spin that, not the spin, it's not the right word, but the positive attitude of, actually, this is an adventure and we're all going through it. We're all going through it. And going back to your message of creating, a vessel of belonging, that's what a culture is really, really important. And we end up on the same note with everyone, and all the experts are saying is, if you know yourself, and you're true to yourself, and you have a culture that understands you, and you have a sense of belonging, a lot of these emotions, whether the anxiety or grief that we've spoken about in the past, just feels like a load is just taken away from you, and
yeah,
it really does, doesn't it? And talking about it is more important as well.
Well, and as a leadership coach, I talk through with my clients around, whilst it's wonderful to be optimistic and to be all of these things, you've also got to be a realist. Part of your job is to understand the full range of possible scenarios. So, what is the worst possible case scenario? What is the in-between case scenario? What's the best case scenario? Once you've at least confronted those, okay, put them to one side and decide where you're going to orient the ship.
And in our next episode, Jerry, we're going to talk about re-entry into the workplace, into the unknown and the brave new world. So I'd love to take that conversation as, talking about the scenarios as a culture, and shaping the culture. Some cultures may need to be adapted. Some may have such, good, strong foundation that they can continue it, but what does it look like in the whole new world? So I'm quite excited to talk to you about that. And thank you so much for your time today. Wonderful. And I think it's the end of the day, and normally I would go and meet with my colleagues and have a roundup of the day. But instead, I am now going to jump into my parent mode and go and make dinner.
That's really important work.
It is. It's just normally I have a 45-minute drive to wind down and transition, and we don't have that anymore. So off to the garden I go.
Good. All righty.
Thank you so much, Jerry.